In February 1978, 5 young men who had all met at a support group for people with mental health issues and learning disabilities decided to go to a basketball game together at a local college. They headed to that basketball game, were seen at that basketball game, and were reported by witnesses as having enjoyed it. They were then seen on CCTV footage at a gas station heading in the general direction of their homes. At that gas station, they picked up a few snacks, some drinks, and they drove off. That was the last time they were seen alive. It would take a few days, about 5, until the car they were driving was found. That car was found halfway up a mountain. So far from the way they were heading, no one had no idea how they got there. The car was the possession of one of the 5 boys, and he was so strongly possessive over his own car, he was known to never let anyone else drive it. But only one of the boys knew the way up that mountain, because it was a seriously treacherous drive to get up, especially considering they're in the midst of a severe snowstorm. But the car was found abandoned, not stuck, not out of gas. It was completely movable, but it was entirely abandoned. The only thing that was found in that car were some blankets, the empty wrappers from the sweets they bought at the gas station when they were last seen, and a neatly folded road map. An investigation began to try and find these boys, and their parents were incredibly worried, but because of the intense weather, it had to be delayed. 3 months later, a group of motorcyclists would come across a cabin/trailer in the woods. Within that cabin, they found one of the boys, Ted Weir. He was found starved and frozen, wrapped in a mountain of blankets. His shoes were missing. Within this cabin was months' worth of rations, some opened, some unopened, and outside the cabin was a propane heater. This boy starved and froze, surrounded by enough food to keep him fed until rescue was potential. He froze in a room that was a button away from heat. He had no shoes, his shoes were never found, and on the table beside him was a watch that belonged to none of the boys. A few weeks after Ted was found, the skeletal remains of 3 other boys, Jack, Will, and another Jack, were found. The skeletons weren't complete. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. One of their fathers saw their son's jacket on the ground and picked it up, only for his son's spine to fall out. Now, it's natural out in the wild for a dead body to be picked apart by animals and such, birds flying away with bones, but to the extent at which these bodies were scattered and dismantled, it was across hundreds of yards. That was just unnatural. The 5th boy, Gary Mathers, was never found. His body was never found. No remains of him was ever found after an intense scouring. The only thing of him that was found was his shoes in the same cabin that Ted was found in. There were reports of them being seen during the night, but none was confirmed. An old man said he saw what he thinks was at least 3 of the boys walking with a woman and a baby. But that man said that same night he had a heart attack and couldn't go back to the town. So that loses some credibility. It's a really weird statement from him. It doesn't make so much sense. But these boys were within reachable distance of a town, and they all died. And if we do take that man's witness statement as reliable, the woman with the baby is like a huge trope in human trafficking where they have this proxy figure. But they weren't trafficked if they were found so soon dead. But what is so mad that Ted was found to have lost 100 pounds. The man was 160 pounds. He was found weighing 60 pounds. And he was found with 3 months worth of beard growth. It was 3 months until his body was found. He was alive up until the point that he was found. He had been living that entire time. He was missing less than a mile away from the area they were searching. It makes no sense, this case, and the fact that one of the boys has never been found in any form, and the other boys have been found as single vertebrae. What really makes you think... Now, I'm just putting this out there, but I do think there is some credence to this theory. Gary was older than everyone else. He was a veteran for the army, and he was reported to sort of been the ringleader of the group. You know, they were disabled and impressionable, incredibly impressionable, and Gary himself was disabled, but he was also very cunning and almost manipulative. Now, what if he planned this out of some malevolent PTSD type deal, and because he was the only boy who knew the way into these woods, as I said, but he would never be allowed to drive the car. Jack was too possessive of it. So what if Gary led these boys out there to hunt them? What if Gary is responsible, directly or indirectly, for these kids' death, these boys' deaths? And those 3 months that Ted is the only one we can confirm was alive longer than the fact that he was found, because the others were found dead outside, so they were allowed natural decomposition, which people think means at some point they left to find something or do something and only returned to find Ted dead. But what if they were killed outside and Ted was kept inside by Gary, and the opened cans of food, which had been confirmed to have been opened by a military grade can opener, which they know that because normal can openers open one way, whereas military grade open another. That's just how they know their rations. They're built in a different way. But they all found that. So what if this man spent those 3 months that Ted was clearly alive by this man's side, eating this food and not giving any to the other? Because there were cans found open and eaten, and there was dozens of more cans, but Ted starved. Could Ted be responsible and have run away and be on the run? He's very likely still alive, but it makes no sense how this could just happen to 5 boys. What were they doing there? Why did they get out of the car? Why did they end up in this cabin? Why did 3 boys leave the cabin at least? Why were their bodies found in such destroyed manners? Why were they there at that time? February in the Sierra Nevada mountains is ice cold, and these boys would have known that. They were scouts. What happened? And why? It's one of those things we probably will never find out, but it's so upsetting. And I hope that we find more information on Gary, whatever happened to him. I think if we can find out what happened to him, there's more credence and availability to find out anything about the other boys. Because if he is still out there, if we find his body, we might find evidence of more reasonable causes of death if we can put the 5 together. But if we were to find him alive, we would have an actual witness statement. But that's just speculation and hope. We'll never know what happened to the Yuba County 5 at this point. We can just hope the same thing never happens to us, because it's terrifying and dreadful.